Hi, my name is Kate. I am 19 years old, and this is the story of why I ran away from home. Before I begin, please like and subscribe. My mom died when I was 4, and soon after my dad starting dating again and met my now stepmom. Growing up was tough. My stepmom would always punish me because I was a slow learner and easily distracted. She would make me do all sort of crazy stuff to learn, such as jumping like a bunny and standing in the corner holding one ear and one foot. I hated it, and after she made me do this, she would always say it is for my own good because she wanted me to have an education and that I would thank her one day. I never did that, nor did I ever like her. When I was 19, I met this guy Chris at school. He was cool and I really liked him, and one day while I was having lunch he came and sat beside me. Can you believe it? I was over the moon because I have always liked him. Soon we started hanging out, and one day my stepmom found out. She punished me and made me do jumping jacks for 2 hours straight. I was fed up of this. I couldn't take it anymore. I felt like I was suffocating in that house. So, I decided to run away from home. I packed a bag with some clothes and a few snacks and snuck out of the house late at night. As I walked down the street, I felt a sense of freedom I had never experienced before. But that feeling didn't last long. Soon enough, I realized that I had nowhere to go and no one to turn to. I was alone and scared. I didn't know what to do, but I knew I couldn't go back home. I walked around for hours, trying to figure out my next move. As I was sitting on a bench in a park, I saw Chris walking towards me. I was surprised to see him and relieved at the same time. He came and sat down next to me, asking me what I was doing there. I ran away from home.
What? Why?
I couldn't take it anymore. My stepmom is too much to handle, I said, tears welling up in my eyes. Chris put his arm around me and pulled me close to him.
I'm sorry, Kate. You shouldn't have to go through this.
I leaned my head on his shoulder, feeling safe and protected. We sat there for a while, not saying anything, but just enjoying each other's company. After a few minutes, Chris looked at me.
You can't stay out here all night. It's not safe. Come stay with me.
I hesitated at first, but then I realized I had nowhere else to go. So, I nodded and followed him to his apartment. As we walked in, I noticed that Chris's apartment was small but cozy. He had a bed, a couch, a TV, and a small kitchen. It was nothing fancy, but it was better than sleeping on the streets.
You can sleep on the couch.
Thank you, Chris. Chris nodded and gave me a small smile before heading to his bedroom. I laid down on the couch, feeling exhausted and overwhelmed. I couldn't believe I had run away from home. What was I going to do now? I asked myself before falling asleep. The next morning, Chris woke me up with a cup of coffee and a smile.
Good morning.
Good morning, I said, feeling a bit more relaxed now that I had slept. We sat down at his small kitchen table and talked about what I was going to do next. Chris suggested that I talk to my dad and try to work things out with him. He also said that if things didn't work out, I could stay with him for a while. I felt grateful for his support and encouragement. It made me feel like I wasn't alone in this. After breakfast, Chris and I walked to my dad's house. I was nervous, but Chris held my hand and gave me a reassuring smile. When we got to the house, I hesitated for a moment before knocking on the door. My dad opened the door, looking surprised to see me.
Kate, where have you been? I was worried sick.
I ran away from home, Dad. I couldn't take it anymore, I said, tears welling up in my eyes. My dad looked at me with a mix of concern and regret.
I'm sorry, Kate. I didn't realize things had gotten so bad.
We sat down and talked for a while. I told him everything that had been going on with my stepmom and how it had been affecting me. He listened patiently and apologized for not being more aware of what was going on. After a long discussion, we were able to come to an agreement. My dad promised to talk to my stepmom and work on improving our relationship. He also promised to enroll me in a tutoring program to help me catch up in school. I felt relieved and grateful for his understanding. Chris and I left the house, feeling much better than when we had arrived. As we walked back to his apartment, Chris looked at me and said,
I'm glad you talked to your dad.
I nodded in agreement. Yeah, I know. I just didn't know what else to do. Chris put his arm around me and pulled me close to him.
You don't have to go through this alone, Kate. I'm here for you.
I smiled and leaned my head on his shoulder. Thank you, Chris. You're a good friend. Chris chuckled.
Just a friend? I thought we were more than that.
I blushed and looked up at him. What do you mean? Chris leaned down and kissed me gently on the lips.
I mean, I really like you, Kate. And I want to be more than just friends.
I felt my heart skip a beat. I had liked Chris for a long time, but I had never thought he felt the same way. I like you too, Chris, I said, smiling. We walked back to his apartment, hand in hand, feeling happy and relieved. We spent the rest of the day hanging out and watching movies, enjoying each other's company. As the sun started to set, I realized that I needed to go back home. Chris walked me to the door and gave me a hug.
Promise me you'll call me if things get tough again.
I promise, I said, feeling grateful for his support. I walked back to my dad's house, feeling more hopeful than I had in a long time. Things weren't perfect, but they were definitely better than they had been before. Over the next few weeks, I worked hard on catching up in school and improving my relationship with my stepmom. It wasn't easy, but I had Chris's support and encouragement to help me through it. One day, as I was walking home from school, I saw Chris waiting for me at the park. He had a huge smile on his face and was holding a bouquet of flowers. What's all this? Chris handed me the flowers.
I just wanted to do something nice for you.
I smiled and hugged him. Thanks, Chris. You're the best. We sat down on the bench, enjoying the warm sun and each other's company. As we talked, I realized that Chris had become more than just a friend. He was someone I could trust and rely on. He was someone I loved. As the sun started to set, Chris looked at me and said,
Kate, I know we've only been dating for a few months, but I feel like I've known you forever. I love you, Kate. Will you be my girlfriend?
I felt my heart swell with happiness. Yes, Chris. I love you too, I said, smiling. Chris leaned down and kissed me gently on the lips. We sat there, wrapped in each other's arms, feeling happy and content. Looking back on that day, I realized that running away from home had been a mistake. But it had also led me to the person I loved most in the world.